Hello, Josie Wales here, back with a Combat Mission Final Blitzkrieg After Action Report. This was a head-to-head battle against Bulletpoint from the Few Good Men and Battlefront forums. It's a quick battle on a random map. I am playing as the Germans and Bulletpoint is playing as the Americans. We are playing a meeting engagement and there are several objectives on the map that we need to capture and hold. There are three minor objectives towards the centre of the map, consisting from top to bottom of the administration building, gasworks and ironworks. And there are two major objectives consisting of the coal processing plant near my start location and the rubber factory near Bulletpoint's start location. As this was a quick battle, we were both able to pick our own forces, with the only house rules being that as this was a meeting engagement there would be no pre-planned artillery for either side, and that all troops would be of regular quality with no modifiers for leadership or motivation. Other than the game settings of tiny, mixed and standard rarity, both of us were free to bring to the table what we wanted. So I brought along a reinforced German rifle company, consisting of 2nd Platoon on the left flank, 3rd Platoon in the centre and 1st Platoon on the right. Attached to the company is a machine gun section, and the battalion commander has come along for the outing as well to allow quicker access to the on-map battalion mortars. Also attached to the battalion HQ is a 37mm self-propelled flak cannon, a 75mm Stummel mounted on a support half-track, and on the right is a Hummel, which is a self-propelled artillery piece with a whopping great 150mm howitzer. My opponent suggested we use a random map type and random terrain type, which has ended up with us getting my least favourite type of terrain, which is a very dense urban stroke industrial environment. The reason I dislike this type of environment so much is because of my lack of familiarity with it. I tend to play battles in more open or more rural environments because that's within my comfort zone. And this battle is pushing me out of that comfort zone, and that can only be a good thing. The map is dotted with these industrial towers, and at first glance they look like they might provide good observation, but closer inspection proves that they have no window facings and therefore are no good as observation posts. Observation on the left flank is pretty good due to the relatively open terrain. The centre is a rabbit warren of industrial buildings ranging from single to 5 stories. Many of the buildings are damaged and provide good cover and concealment. There is good observation on the right flank due to the straight section of railway which runs along this side of the map. There are high and low walls running throughout the map which provide good cover for infantry against small arms but are an obstacle for vehicles. The rubble strewn about the town is an unknown element for me with regards to the immobilisation of vehicles, but I intend to avoid them regardless. I will also be avoiding moving vehicles across the muddy fields around the outskirts of the town. I am starting at the northern end of the map and this is the view looking towards the south. 3 pieces of key terrain have been identified. The first piece is an area south of the gasworks and east of the ironworks, which I have designated KT1. If I can occupy this position, I can use it to block my opponent's approach from the south, and also I can use it to threaten the ironworks. I have also identified the gasworks objective as key terrain 2 and the administration building objective as key terrain 3. The reason I have identified these two objectives as key terrain is because they can both mutually support each other and dominate the centre left. It would be very difficult for my opponent to attack one of these objectives without also having to launch an attack on the other. The initial plan is to manoeuvre my reinforced company into position. 2nd Platoon will move towards the administration building, 3rd Platoon will take the gasworks, and 1st Platoon will take the biggest risk of all in trying to secure KT1. The battalion HQ, together with the battalion mortars, will move to the coal processing objective, with the self-propelled flak cannon securing the left flank, the Stummel supporting the centre, and the Hummel securing the right flank with observation down the railway track. My opponent will be starting at the southern end of the map, and I expect a fairly narrow avenue of approach through the most covered areas. The time is 1500 hours. I have 45 minutes to complete the mission. The weather is overcast, it's cold, the ground conditions are damp, and the wind is medium from the west. I have no off-map support. The company begins its manoeuvre south. Second platoon approach the administration building. The flak cannon moves to a position where it can cover the left flank. Centre left, 3rd platoon move into the gasworks. The Stummel moves to support the centre. And centre right, 1st platoon begin the long sprint towards KT1. Time here is critical, as I want 1st platoon to get into that key terrain before my opponent can. On the right flank, the Hummel spots a US scout team moving down the railroad track. It also spots a scout jeep. Strategic Update 1. 1503 hours, 3 minutes into battle. The infantry company has pushed southwards towards the administration building, the gasworks and KT1, with the flak cannon securing the left flank, the Stummel supporting the centre right, and the Hummel on the right flank spotting infantry and a jeep moving down the railroad from the south. The battalion HQ and battalion mortars are hanging just a bit back from the coal processing plant to see how the situation develops. I was expecting my opponent to take a more covered avenue of approach. However, he seems to be manoeuvring what may be a platoon-sized element down the railroad track. Zooming in on the gasworks and administration building, we can see how the individual rifle platoons are doing. On the left, 2nd Platoon have secured the northern end of the administration building. Centre left and 3rd Platoon are starting to push into the gasworks objective. Centre right, 1st Platoon have moved past the gasworks and are on their way towards KT1. One of the heavy machine guns is supporting 3rd Platoon and the other is supporting 1st Platoon. 2nd Platoon's next immediate task is to move through the administration building and secure the southern end. Similarly, 3rd Platoon will move through the gasworks to secure the southern aspect. 1st Platoon have the riskiest task of all. They need to move towards KT1. But this means manoeuvring across an area of open ground between KT2 and KT1. This task is made all the more dangerous by enemy infantry moving fast down the right flank and a light vehicle contact just to the south of the administration building. A squad from 1st Platoon begin to manoeuvre across the open ground and come under fire. Third Platoon push through the gasworks towards the northern end. They are surprised by a second jeep team, which is quickly neutralised. On the left, 2nd Platoon pushed towards the northern end of the administration building. The Stummel pushes forward and spots the jeep spotted earlier by the Hummel, only this time the crew have dismounted. It is destroyed as a precaution, but the crew are likely inside the coal processing objective. The battalion HQ, along with the battalion mortars, move in to seek them out. The lead squad from 1st Platoon continue to push across to KT1. However, only 3 make it inside the key terrain objective, only to find it is crawling with US infantry. The rest of 1st Platoon attempt to support them. And although a valiant attempt is made, the outcome is inevitable. On the left, 2nd Platoon get into the fight. Not only are US infantry inside KT1, they are also inside the ironworks objective, and 1st Platoon are caught in a crossfire. First Platoon are unable to withstand the withering American firepower. The Stummel moves forward to support 1st Platoon by targeting American infantry in the ironworks. It succeeds in quietening down this flank. Right of the ironworks, US engineers make a hole. However, 1st Platoon have at least done something right and secured this flank with one of the heavy machine guns. The US fire team is cut in half, and the remaining 2 survivors scurry back through the hole in the smoke. On the left, the Greyhound section is spotted moving up from the south. The arrival of the Greyhounds is allowing the Americans to get the upper hand in this firefight. On the right, a 3rd Greyhound moves right in front of the Stummel's line of fire. The Stummel moves to take on US infantry spotted in the building to the right of the ironworks. On the left, the Greyhound section are causing havoc with 3rd Platoon at the gasworks and 2nd Platoon at the administration building. Both platoons fall back inside their respective objectives. Back at the coal processing plant, the battalion HQ and mortar teams seek out the dismounted jeep team. Coal processing plant is secured, but a couple of casualties have been taken. With 2nd and 3rd Platoon having pulled back off the fire step, the battlefield falls eerily quiet. Until one of the Greyhounds from the section on the left makes a bold move forward. Presenting an opportunity that can't be missed. But neutralising the Greyhound attracts attention. And the only option is to take this small victory and fall back. The Hummel is retasked from observing the railroad tracks to providing additional fire support at the centre. It finds a keyhole position to put some shells into the ironworks. Meanwhile, the Stummel pulls back a bit. On the far left, a 4th Greyhound is spotted, and the flat cannon is manoeuvred to better support the centre. Strategic Update 2, 15-12 hours, 12 minutes into battle. Zooming in to get a better look at what's going on. On the left is 2nd Platoon at the admin building. In the centre is 3rd Platoon at the gasworks. Ahead of them are the remnants of 1st Platoon. Both heavy machine guns are still up supporting the centre. And the battalion HQ and mortars have cleared the coal processing plant of the 3-man jeep team. The flat cannon is out on the far left where it is not really able to give any support. And the Hummel has relocated to just behind the gasworks and is putting fire down on the ironworks. Initial contact with my opponent did not go very well. 1st Platoon have suffered high casualties and have been reduced to a squad-sized element. They have also lost their platoon HQ. Going back to the initial plan, we can see that it was deeply flawed. 1st Platoon did have the riskiest job of all, which was to try and reach KT1. However, rather than sprint across in one go, one squad was going to make the crossing whilst the other 2 squads supported from nearby. Once the first squad had made it across, the other 2 squads would have followed together with the platoon HQ. This crossing was to be supported by 3rd Platoon at the gaswork and 2nd Platoon at the administration building. However, KT1 was already heavily infiltrated by US troops, and the small force that did make it across to KT1 was quickly overwhelmed. US troops were also present in the ironworks. The American troops on KT1 were then able to engage all 3 of my platoons, with 1st Platoon being particularly exposed because of the poor cover offered by the domestic buildings near the open ground. US troops in the ironworks were able to pour on enfilading fire into 1st Platoon, and this is what caused most of their casualties. I did manage to get the Stummel to pour some fire into the ironworks, and this did succeed in reducing the enfilading fire from that direction, by getting my opponent to pull back his troops. The arrival of the Greyhound section on my left flank was able to overwhelm both 3rd Platoon at the gasworks and 2nd Platoon at the administration building, giving me no option other than to pull those units back further into the objectives. At this point, my opponent does look like he has the advantage. For all intents and purposes, 1st Platoon has been put out of action. However, I do hold one major objective and 2 minor objectives, with both of those minor objectives also being key terrain. My opponent holds 1 major objective and 1 minor objective, but he also holds KT1, and this could prove decisive in the coming half hour. I will need to be much more cautious with my future manoeuvres. The Hummel continues to hit the ironworks with 150mm high explosives. The flak cannon isn't doing very much on the far left flank, so relocates towards the right. The survivors from the US breach team from earlier make another dash for it, but they never had a chance. In the centre, US infantry teams are seen advancing out of KT1 towards the open ground. In one of the domestic buildings, they find the only survivor of 1st Platoon's 1st Squad, who quickly surrenders. They quickly move across the open ground into the house behind which the last remaining intact squad of 1st Platoon are gathering themselves, and they catch them completely unawares. American infantry in KT1 that are supporting the advance across the open ground are able to amass an amazing amount of firepower. By comparison, my own return fire from the gasworks is a token effort. The last member of 1st Platoon finally falls, and the centre is now badly threatened. On the right, the mortar teams push out of the coal processing plant to set up a smoke screen, which will provide concealment for the flak cannon, which has been relocated to this flank. The idea here is to hit and run so as not to attract return fire. The mortar teams are then tasked to reinforce the gasworks. With the American advance into the centre, my rightmost machine gun team is dangerously exposed in open ground. The Hummel is pulled out of its keyhole position to provide them with covering fire as they withdraw. Although the Section HQ team make it to safety, the machine gun crew are outflanked by a Greyhound which is pushed over to the right. On the left, 2nd Platoon move back onto the fire step at the administration building to try and intercept US infantry reinforcing the centre. But pull back before the American firepower from KT1 can do any real damage. With the machine gun team failing to extract itself, the Hummel is pushed over to the right flank. In the centre outside the gasworks, US infantry start to create a smoke screen. And there is a rapid build-up in supporting fires from KT-1. This can only indicate that an assault is imminent, so 3rd Platoon move back onto the fire step at the gasworks. One squad is repulsed, but 2 members make it inside the eastern side of the gasworks. The American assault is well supported. And 2 fire teams make it inside the western end of the gasworks. They run into 3rd Platoon's second line of defence and are wiped out. Another fire team infiltrate the centre of the gasworks but are easily picked off. As the mortar teams arrive to reinforce the objective, the battlefield falls quiet once again. Strategic Update 3, 15:27 hours, 27 minutes into battle. 2nd Platoon still occupy the administration building on the left, whilst 3rd Platoon have borne the brunt of an American assault against the gasworks. 1 machine gun remains from the machine gun section, as does the section HQ. The company HQ is supporting the defence of the gasworks, and the mortar teams have relocated from the right flank to reinforce the objective. The Hummel is covering the right flank and is attempting to prevent any further flanking manoeuvres by my opponent's Greyhounds. The flak cannon is using hit and run tactics to primarily keep my opponent guessing as to my plan for the flak cannon, but also hopefully to catch him off guard and cause a few casualties. My opponent has launched an attack from KT-1 across the open ground towards the gasworks objective. Due to the American superior firepower in this area, I was unable to prevent this manoeuvre. This allowed him to build up an assault force on the southern side of the brick wall outside the gasworks, and use that assault force together with supporting fires from KT-1 and the ironworks to breach into the gasworks objective. An 8-man element did manage to get into the western end of the gasworks, but was cut down by the 3rd Platoon defenders. Another 4-man team breached the central area of the gasworks, but were easily dealt with. However, a 2-man element made it into the eastern end of the gasworks and are still at large. This means that the gasworks are now contested. So the next step is to continue to reinforce the gasworks and eliminate the 2 US troops before my opponent can make further breaches, being mindful that the southeastern end of the objective is well covered by US infantry on KT-1 and the Greyhounds nearby. The battlefield remains quiet for the next few minutes, with the only noise coming from the flak cannon continuing its hit and run tactics. The Hummel attempts to relocate nearer the gasworks, but the commander is taken out by a sniper. As the battalion mortar teams reinforce the gasworks, the hunt continues for the 2 US riflemen inside. One of the Greyhounds is sporadically hitting the objective. 3rd Platoon locate the American infiltrators, but there's more than just 2 of them. This encounter with an American squad inside the gasworks objective has left 11 of my troops dead to 9 of my opponents. It's too much for some who run for safety. But if an American squad has infiltrated this far into the objective, there must be others towards the southeastern end. 3rd Platoon must root them out to win back the objective. However, at this end of the gasworks, the Americans can provide supporting fire from KT-1 and the nearby Greyhounds. It's all too much for 3rd Platoon and the battalion mortar teams, who pull back further into the objective, whilst the Americans continue to reinforce. Although some do get caught out crossing the open ground. The flak cannon is relocated to help defend the gasworks. On the left, US troops are spotted manoeuvring towards the administration building objective. One team gets inside, surprising 2nd Platoon and killing the battalion commander. As more US troops continue to manoeuvre towards the administration building, they're intercepted by small arms fire from 3rd Platoon inside the gasworks. The flak cannon arrives on station, but due to limited lines of fire, it cannot provide effective support. Despite this, the American attack on the administration building fails. The flak cannon is taken out, presumably by one of the Greyhounds. As the timer counts down, 3rd Platoon and the battalion mortar teams launch one last desperate attack to get the Americans out of the gasworks. The American firepower is too great, and as the final attack fails, the battle comes to its end. It's a US Army minor victory. I have 444 points, and Bulletpoint has 581 points. I have 43 men OK, 113 casualties, and have lost 2 armoured vehicles. Bulletpoint has 86 men OK, has taken 80 casualties, has lost 2 armoured vehicles and 2 jeeps. My opponent has managed to get the ironworks and rubber factory objectives and has achieved an acceptable 410 points for causing casualties. I have control of the coal processing and administration building objectives, whilst getting 273 points for inflicting casualties. Let's take an overview of the map, showing the 2 objectives that I control and the 2 objectives controlled by Bulletpoint and the contested gasworks objective. Zooming in on the gasworks, where most of the action took place towards the end of the battle. After winning the firefight for the open ground, Bulletpoint was able to maneuver troops into the southeastern end of the objective. From there, they were able to infiltrate deeper into the objective until they were checked by 3rd Platoon and the mortar teams reinforcing from the north. This forced the American troops back into the southeast corner, which not only were they able to reinforce, but also able to support by fires from KT-1 and the nearby Greyhounds. As a result, all attempts to remove the US infiltrators of the gasworks failed. And with the map revealed, it looks like there were 2 full squads in that southeastern corner. I'd like to thank my opponent Bulletpoint for an excellent game, well played on his part. Great use of fire and manoeuvre, and with him winning the firefight for the open ground, he was then able to manoeuvre his troops and take the gasworks, or at least contest the gasworks objective. I also believe he made a very sound force selection. My own force selection could have been a bit better. The Hummel wasn't particularly effective, and neither was the flat cannon in this particular battle. As always, if you like what you've seen, please leave a like, feel free to subscribe, leave a comment. I'm Josie Wales. War is hell. Thanks for watching.